Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, after the historical win of Zohran Mamdani in New York mayoral elections, another historical act is going to take place at the Oval Office. For the first time in American history, a communist Muslim leader will be meeting the Republican president of the time. Despite spending months attacking each other during New York mayoral elections, the New York mayor the city mayor, Zohran Mamdani, will meet President Donald Trump. Trump, who previously insulted Mamdani and even joked about deporting him, has recently softened his tone and agreed to discuss how they can work together.
Speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people, whether they live in blue states or red states or blue cities, in a city that's becoming much more left than I think this president ever anticipated in his many years of living in New York himself.
Now, Mamdani said that even though he and Trump were at loggerheads during the elections, he wants to talk to Trump about important issues like public safety, economic security, and other priorities he'd promised his voters.
It is customary for an incoming mayor of this city to meet with the White House, given the mutual reliance. It's more critical than ever. My team reached out to the White House to set up this meeting because I will work with anyone to make life more affordable for the more than 8.5 million people who call this city home. I have many disagreements with the president, and I believe that we should be relentless and pursue all avenues and all meetings that could make our city affordable for every single New Yorker. I intend to make it clear to President Trump that I will work with him on any agenda that benefits New Yorkers. If an agenda hurts New Yorkers, I will also be the first to say so.
And my colleague Rohit Sharma joins me from Washington, D.C., which is where the meeting is going to take place. Rohit, we know that they've taken very hard positions. What prompted this meeting between the two leaders?
Well, frankly, this isn't the first time mayor-elect of New York City would be traveling down to Washington, D.C. to meet the President of the United States. These are customary meetings. We've seen those before as well. So I think Zohran Mamdani is following the pattern here of getting a meeting with the President of the United States, New York being one of the most important cities, not only in America, but in the world. So I think this was on expected lines. What people didn't see coming was how soon this meeting is getting done. It was only 2.5 weeks ago when Mamdani went on the stage and said he was addressing President Donald Trump and asked President Trump to turn the volume up, as he said. So there will be no need of doing that, in all honesty. I think they will be coming down to D.C. 3 p.m. Eastern is when the meeting is with Zohran Mamdani, and they would be discussing things that would cater to their base. President Trump has called him communist, and we might get to see what they discuss. It's a closed meeting, so we would not have any press until unless the White House decides to change it last minute. So we'll have to wait and watch what they talk about after the meeting, but clearly no love lost between both the leaders.
Well, okay, Rohit, then let's talk about the fact that the two leaders have taken positions. Now, we do know that there was a threat against New York City itself by Donald Trump when he said that he's not going to pay New York City should Zohran Mamdani become mayor. What to expect from this meeting? Will there be, will the funds start coming into New York yet again or not?
So I think he's going to come and drive home the message that he wants to work with President Trump in driving those costs down. I think affordability is the new buzzword in America. Everybody's talking about it. President Trump's talking about it. And he was the first one in the summer who started talking about it. So it is going to be a very interesting meeting when these leaders meet. I think President Trump would go into meeting, and we've seen him do that before, also with other elected representatives from the other state governments, including the governor of New York, Katie Hochul, who was there a couple of months ago, that when he gets into these meetings, he means business, and he wants to make sure that his priorities are taken care of while ensuring that his responsibility as the president is also accounted for in making sure that he can run the government effectively. So it'll be interesting as to what President Trump would do in the meeting. I expect him to remind New York Mayor-Elect that there are certain red lines that this administration has, and that he would not expect Mamdani to cross those. For example, DEI funding and things like that, so that President can continue and Washington, D.C. can continue to fund New York City's important programs, which again helps Zohran Mamdani to reduce cost. So we'll probably see some kind of a deal-making approach from President Trump. As far as Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is concerned, I think he definitely would want all the funding to come to New York to meet his campaign promises.
Right, Rohit, you tracked that meeting. It'll take place around 1 a.m. India time, so wee hours over here. But we'll be taking all the developments early tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for joining us for now. Now, a US-backed peace initiative is in the spotlight as President Trump sends a high-level delegation to Kiev to present a 28-point plan to President Zelensky. We examine Kiev's reaction, criticisms from officials, and how ongoing Russian attacks are complicating negotiations. A report by Meenakshi Shandalia.
US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are making headlines again. On Thursday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks with a high-ranking US military delegation led by US Secretary of Army Daniel Driscoll. The meeting in Kyiv focused on discussing possible steps towards a negotiated peace, supported by the United States and aimed at opening a channel for diplomatic talks. During the meeting, Driscoll presented the draft 28-point peace plan prepared by US President Donald Trump.
Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done. I know Secretary Driscoll did meet with President Zelensky today. We spoke with him. He was very optimistic following that meeting, and so again, we are having good conversations with both sides with respect to ending this war.
Zelensky said he is open to discussing any proposal that could bring peace, including Trump's peace plan. However, he also emphasized that peace must be fair and should not weaken Ukraine or force it to surrender essential rights. Many officials in Kyiv called the draft plan absurd and unacceptable, saying it would amount to giving victory to Russia and damaging Ukraine's sovereignty. The 28-point peace proposal asks Ukraine to give up Crimea and Donbas, freeze current front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia, and limit its army to 600,000 soldiers. Ukraine would also agree to never join NATO, host no foreign troops, and rely on European jets based in Poland for protection. The US would offer unspecified security guarantees and use $100 billion in frozen Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine, while Russia would gradually rejoin the global economy and see sanctions lifted. Zelensky expects to speak directly with Donald Trump soon to review the plan's key points and continue negotiations.
I expect to speak with President Trump in the coming days. We are truly aware that America's strength and America's support can truly bring peace closer, and we don't want to lose that. We are also aware that Russia has no desire for peace, otherwise they would not have started this war.
The process is still uncertain because Ukraine's European allies want to be involved and insist that any peace deal must not be based on territorial losses.
We are supportive of any plan that brings about just and lasting peace. As for the peace plan we understand that President Zelensky has been presented with, we have always said that any peace plan to work, it has to be with Ukraine and with the Europeans on board.
Meanwhile, fighting on the ground continues as Russia attacked southern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia with glide bombs killing 5 people just after the detailed discussion of peace plan between Ukraine and the US delegation. This is making the progress towards any agreement difficult and raising questions about how realistic the plan is right now. With Meenakshi Shandilia, Bureau Report, India Today.
And news just coming in. First reaction after the big Ukraine-US official talks. President Zelensky is now speaking to the people from a location outside his official office in Kiev and emphasizing on the gravity of the situation. He's described Ukraine as facing one of the most difficult moments in history because the country's main ally, United States of America, is pushing Ukraine to negotiate a peace deal with Russia. Clearly, the Ukrainian president not happy with the peace deal that's on offer, a nation that has been engaged in conflict with Ukraine for over a decade. He says that what the deal is really a pro-Russia deal. Essentially, he's also highlighting the tension between the need for international support and the fear that the proposed deal could compromise Ukraine's sovereignty or security. So it's very clear that the talks did not go down well for Ukraine. Listen in.
Now is one of the most difficult moments in our history. Now the pressure on Ukraine is one of the most difficult. Now Ukraine may find itself facing a very difficult choice. Either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. Either the difficult 28 points or an extremely difficult winter. The most difficult and further risks.
So in the question over here is Ukraine losing to Russia? Has Zelensky lost the plot? On Statecraft, what we discuss and dive deep into is Trump's explosive 28-point pro-Ukraine peace plan, which now has jolted Kyiv, rattled Europe, and certainly left Moscow cautiously intrigued, sparking a fierce debate over whether this proposal is a breakthrough blueprint for Ukraine or a geopolitical time bomb waiting to detonate. Watch the report. Donald Trump's 28-point Ukraine peace proposal didn't simply arrive in Kyiv. It landed with the force of a political thunderclap. Handed formally to President Volodymyr Zelensky, the plan jolted European capitals, unsettled Kyiv's leadership, and forced Washington into rapid clarification. Why such shock? Because Trump's outline doesn't pretend to maintain the status quo. It tackles head-on issues Russia has long argued lie at the core of the conflict: NATO expansion, Ukraine's military orientation, and the status of territories Moscow considers historically, culturally, and strategically tied to Russia. As Zelensky heads into meetings with top US officials, he now confronts a proposal that could redefine the battlefield and Europe's future security order. But if Europe rejects it, Kyiv fears it, and Moscow treats it cautiously, is this peace blueprint already politically impossible? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The plan's origins are just as consequential. Developed after quiet discussions between US envoy Steve Witkoff and his Russian counterpart Kirill Dmitriev, the proposal surfaces at a moment when Russia has announced new battlefield advances. Ukraine faces a $100 million corruption scandal, and European leaders feel sidelined. Meanwhile, Trump has shifted the cost of Ukraine aid onto NATO allies, tightened sanctions on Russian energy companies, and declared securing peace as his administration's top priority. In this climate of pressure and fatigue, the question becomes, can a plan rooted in addressing Russia's long-standing grievances form the basis of a durable settlement? Trump's 28-point document begins with an attempt to reset Europe's entire security architecture, a broad non-aggression pact between Russia, Ukraine, and European states described as resolving all ambiguities of the last 30 years. For Russia, this is the first acknowledgement from Washington that European security cannot be built by ignoring Moscow's concerns. But for many in Europe, the proposal appears to codify what they see as Russia's strategic priorities, halting NATO expansion and formalizing a security buffer. The plan says Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will cease enlargement, a formulation Moscow views as essential to ending what it calls decades of Western encroachment. With NATO deeply involved in Ukraine's defense, even a temporary freeze on new members challenges a principle Europe holds sacred. Ministers privately ask, is this a genuine blueprint for stabilization or a concession to Russian security logic? Trump continues applying pressure on Russia through sanctions while simultaneously offering a framework Europeans view as accommodating Moscow's demands. The result is a diplomatic puzzle. No side fully rejects the plan, but none accept it as written. So as Zelensky prepares for more consultations, European leaders attempt to form a unified response, and Russia waits for specifics. Is Trump's plan a viable starting point for negotiations or a high-profile proposal doomed by mistrust on all sides? Can Russia indulge in a war again, or is it daring the West the way it does Moscow through Ukraine? This question comes to mind after reports of Russian vessel Yantar was reportedly entering British waters. The British Defense Ministry released pictures on the 19th of November of alleged Russian spy ship Yantar, which was spotted near Scotland and reportedly directed lasers at British pilots monitoring it. Defense Minister John Healey told the media that the vessel poses a new threat to UK security, adding that the military will monitor all its activities and keep its options ready if needed. Defense Minister also said that the UK Navy will now observe the ship more closely as it may be mapping the British undersea cables. He used the incident to justify the increased defense spending and the building of new ammunition factories by the United Kingdom.
As I speak, a Russian spy ship, the Yantar, is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland, having entered the UK's wider waters over the last few weeks. This is a vessel designed for gathering intelligence and mapping our undersea cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and RAF P-8 planes to monitor and track this vessel's every move, during which the Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. That Russian action is deeply dangerous. And this is the second time this year that this ship, the Yantar, has deployed to UK waters. So my message to Russia and to Putin is this. We see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
However, Russian embassy in the United Kingdom has denied any wrongdoing, calling the UK response Russophobic and saying that Russia is not interested in British water system. Now, fresh clashes broke out between Gen Z protesters and KP Oli's party workers, forcing authorities to impose a temporary curfew in Nepal's Bara district. With elections just months away, the unrest is once again raising tough questions about Nepal's political stability. So what exactly triggered this latest flare-up? Here's a report by Jyoti Shukla.
Nepal is once again witnessing unrest, months after Gen Z protests forced KP Oli out of power. And this week, the tensions returned, centered around Simara in the Bara district, where authorities imposed a curfew after fresh clashes between Gen Z activists and cadres of former Prime Minister KP Oli's Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist. The violence erupted on November 19 near Simara Airport. According to multiple media reports, young protesters had gathered to oppose the arrival of senior Unified Marxist-Leninist leaders who were expected to attend an anti-government rally. What began as a demonstration quickly spiraled into stone pelting, scuffles, and then a harsh police response. Police fired tear gas and even carried out aerial warning shots to push back the crowds. At least 10 people were injured, including both protesters and police personnel. The situation got so volatile that Samara Airport temporarily suspended all operations. The district administration office stepped in quickly, imposing a curfew across parts of the Bara district to restore order. The curfew remained in effect until 8 p.m. on Thursday, November 20, as officials tried to stabilize the ground situation. Local authorities said they may shift to a lighter prohibitory order if calm continues, but for now, they remain on alert. Interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has urged restraint, warning all parties to refrain from political provocation ahead of the March 5, 2026 elections. Her government is under pressure to maintain peace, especially after the deadly anti-corruption uprising earlier this year. To understand the anger on the streets, you have to go back to September 2025. That's when Nepal saw its biggest youth-led revolt in decades. The Gen Z movement. Triggered initially by a brief social media ban, but later fueled by deep frustration over corruption, nepotism, unemployment and political stagnation. At least 76 people were killed in those protests, according to local reports, and the turmoil eventually brought down Oli's government. But the grievances never fully went away. Gen Z activists continue to demand justice for the protesters killed in September. Meanwhile, the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, has been holding rallies across the country calling for the reinstatement of the dissolved House of Representatives. This week's clashes in Samara show that Nepal's political wounds remain raw, and with elections just months away, the country's youth are making it clear their fight isn't over. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today.
That's all on the show for the week. See you Monday. But before I go, just days after meeting Cristiano Ronaldo, Trump shared an AI-generated video of himself playing football with the star in the Oval Office. The video, posted on his official Instagram, has already racked up nearly 34 million views, with social media users having a field day poking fun at the playful clip. Have fun with the video. Goodbye and take care.